Welcome back to CIA Declassified, Guatemala, 1954. To the American public, it was a crusade against communist infiltration in the Western Hemisphere. To the United Fruit Company, it was a matter of protecting land and profit, but to the CIA's Directorate of Plans, it was a laboratory for a new kind of warfare. Operation PB Success. The coup was not just about radio broadcasts and rebel armies, it was about the removal of human obstacles. In the early 1990s, the agency declassified a 19-page document that had been handed out to paramilitary leaders and agency assets in Guatemala City. It bore no official letterhead, no signature, and no date. Its title was simply, quote, "A Study of Assassination," end quote. This is document CIA RDP78-00915R000300140001-1. It is the most clinical, cold-blooded instructional guide ever produced by the United States government. The manual doesn't use euphemisms. It treats the act of murder as a technical problem to be solved with the efficiency of an assembly line. A direct quote, "Assassination is a term which should be applied only to the killing of persons who are retired from public life. The term elimination is preferred for the removal of active political figures. The most efficient accident is a fall of 75 feet or more onto a hard surface. Elevator shafts, stairwells, unscreened windows, and bridges are the preferred locations." End quote. The manual categorizes kills into three types: the manual, the accidental, and the blunt instrument. It provides instructions on how to use a hammer to crush a skull in a way that looks like a fall, and how to use the edge of the hand to collapse a trachea. The agency's guide specifically warns against using elaborate plots. It argues that the simplest method, the low-tech approach, is the hardest to trace back to a government entity. It was about deniability through simplicity. Beyond the physical act of elimination, PB Success pioneered the integration of assassination with psychological terror. This was not just about killing an individual, it was about the theatricality of death. Another quote, "The assassination of a political leader must be handled so as to produce the maximum psychological effect. The public must be convinced that the act was the work of local disgruntled elements, or better yet, an internal purge within the victim's own party," end quote. The operational logs reveal that the CIA didn't just want targets dead, they wanted them discredited in the eyes of the populace. Before a trigger was ever pulled, character assassination dossiers were circulated. This ensured that when the physical elimination occurred, the vacuum left behind was filled with suspicion and chaos rather than martyrdom. Perhaps the most disturbing part of the manual is the section on, quote, "the assassin," end quote. The agency wasn't looking for heroes, they were looking for disposable tools. A quote, "The person who is chosen to carry out the mission must be a person who is already lost to society. He should be unstable, without family ties, and preferably with a history of grievances against the target. He must be expendable," end quote. The CIA wasn't just planning murders, they were profiling the kind of broken human beings who could be manipulated into committing them. They wanted someone who would not survive the act, or someone who could be easily disposed of by the agency once the target was neutralized. This was the birth of the Burned Asset Protocol. While the instructional guide is now public, the documents attached to PB's Success regarding the actual targets are heavily censored. Strict speculation. There are over 40 pages of redacted target list in the PB Success archives. Speculation by historians suggests these are the A list and B list, not just high-ranking government officials, but union leaders, journalists, and even low-level student activists who were deemed ideologically unredeemable. The heaviest redactions occur around Project Sherwood, the propaganda arm of the coup. Speculation suggests these pages detail how the CIA used the assassination guide to stage fake murders of their own supporters to blame on the government, creating a strategy of tension that justified the eventual military takeover. The redactions protect the identities of the Guatemalan nationals who carried out these false flag executions under agency direction. What the declassified files don't show explicitly, they imply through omission. We see references to final disposition sites, locations where targets were taken once they were no longer useful. The PB success file include memos on training sites in Nicaragua and Honduras. These were not just firing ranges, they were human ecology laboratories where assets were taught the interrogation to elimination pipeline. A quote, "It is essential that the subject be convinced that his captors are omnipotent and that his only hope for a merciful outcome is total compliance. Once compliance is achieved, the subject's utility drops to zero," end quote. In the narrowest sense, PB's success was a triumph. Many leaders fled into exile, and a pro-American military did end up taking power. Analysis, the agency considered it the gold standard for regime change. They had successfully overthrown a government using a tiny rebel force, a massive amount of psychological warfare, and the targeted elimination of key friction points. But the long-term cost was catastrophic. The coup triggered a 36-year civil war in Guatemala that resulted in the death of over 200,000 people. The success of PB success gave the CIA a false sense of omnipotence, leading directly to the failures of the Bay of Pigs just 7 years later. They learned that they could break a country, but they couldn't necessarily put it back together. PB's success changed the tradecraft of the agency forever. Technological breakthroughs, the coup saw the first major use of clandestine radio as a weapon. The CIA created the Voice of Liberation, a fake radio station that used black propaganda to convince the Guatemalan army that a massive invasion was happening when there were actually only a few dozen men. This led to the development of the S-Unit, portable radio transmitters, which became standard for every coup attempt thereafter. Operational breakthroughs. The most significant breakthrough was the instructional guide itself. It standardized the executive action protocols. Before 1954, assassinations were handled on a case-by-case basis. After PB's success, it became a codified capability that the TSD, the Technical Services Division, maintained. The manualized approach to regime change was exported to Iran, Chile, and the Congo throughout the Cold War. The ultimate breakthrough of PB's success was the perfection of plausible deniability. The CIA proved that they could run a full-scale war without a single American soldier ever stepping into the line of fire. The agency created a front company called the Guatemalan Health and Welfare Association to funnel money for weapons. This became the template for Air America and other front organizations used in later decades. This is a quote, "The operation is successful only if the hand of the United States remains invisible. Any exposure of agency participation is a failure of the highest order, regardless of the tactical outcome," end quote. While the operational files highlight the efficiency of the coup, internal reviews conducted decades later tell a more complex story of internal tension. In a 1975 internal review conducted by the CIA's Inspector General, the agency admitted that A Study of Assassination guide was physically distributed to paramilitary leadership in the field, a direct violation of the agency's own charter regarding the training of foreign nationals in lethal techniques. Furthermore, the Declassified Success Memo sent to CIA Director Alan Dulles in July 1954 contains a striking final sentence. Quote, "The tactical mission is complete. The human inventory is being liquidated," end quote. This phrase, human inventory being liquidated, remains one of the most debated and chilling descriptions of post-coup cleanup in the history of the Directorate of Operations, signaling a phase of the operation that, even today, remains largely shielded by national security exemptions. A Study of Assassination remains a dark stain on the agency's history. It is a reminder that when the state decides that a person's life is an obstacle to strategic interest, the response is not always a diplomatic cable. Sometimes it is a hammer and a stairwell. Next time on CIA Declassified, we move from the jungles of Guatemala to the crushing pressures of the ocean floor. We enter the world of Project Diving Bell. In a race against the Soviets to recover a lost nuclear warhead, the CIA pushed the limits of human physiology. We'll examine the secret development of saturation diving and the deep-sea interrogation modules. It wasn't just about salvaging metal. It was about the agency's attempt to build a permanent presence in the silent service. Join us for CIA Declassified, Pressure Point on Project Diving Bell. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.